it has been and continues to be the honor of a lifetime to have the opportunity to represent Northeast Ohio. It's something that the constituents of the 16th district have gifted me and my family. We take it seriously. We love doing it, and it is very bittersweet to not run for reelection. But the truth is, when we think about what kind of life we want for our two kids, for our marriage, what kind of dad do I want to be, what kind of husband do I want to be, and how that looks for us, that the honest truth is, we have to do this. It's the right thing for us. It's sad to go, certainly, but ultimately, if I'm not willing to put my family first, then what good am I? And so that's the decision. And again, I know it's disappointing for a lot of people. It's the same for me, but we got to do what's right for us.
Talk a little bit about your statement. You had feared that the the atmosphere or the culture has gotten very toxic. And how does that play into that decision to put family first?
Yeah, admittedly, the reasons 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 why we're doing this are to take care of the family and to live the family life that Elizabeth and I have always dreamed of. But the truth is, the environment is very toxic, and especially the dynamics inside our own party, which have sort of stopped making sense to me in a lot of ways. And so, if you find yourself in a position where you're in a job that definitely doesn't work well for your wife and kids and for your family as a whole, and then you're fighting battles in an environment where we just seem to have lost the ability to dialogue and to reason, and to do it in a way that's respectful and thoughtful, inside of politics. In normal society, we still do the same things that we've always done, and people are incredibly kind and gracious across Northeast Ohio and the country. But our politics has gotten so polluted, that that environment, for me personally, is just not one that I'm willing to be a part of going forward after serving out my term.
Yeah, and you're not the first. We've seen some of this in previous election cycles. People have made that decision. But is there room for your brand of policy and ideology in the Republican Party right now? Because you seem to have been a very serious congressman. We've talked on policy issues before, just recently on Afghanistan. Is there room for you or people like you with ideology and policy in the party?
I think there is. Now, the thing I always say is voters ultimately decide the direction of the party. One thing I'll say, if you sort of look at the typical primary electorate in a congressional district, you're looking at roughly 10% of the population. And I think there's an open question as to how do we change the dynamics where more people are voting in primaries, which is for congressional seats. That's where the decision is made. It's these seats are all pretty heavily gerrymandered, and whoever wins that primary, whether on the Republican or Democrat side, depending on the district, that's going to be the member of Congress. But turnout is really low, and so I know just from being in the district and talking to folks and just getting a feel for what's happening on the ground, as well as looking at polling, that there's absolutely there is room for someone like myself. I do believe I would have won had I run. But the reality is you need more people to participate in the democratic process. When I talk to people, the vast majority are really disgusted with both parties, and they want to see something that they can latch on to. For a lot of folks, my candidacy represented that, and that's disappointing for them, and it's disappointing for me. But the truth is, there is a way to sort of bring us back from the brink, and it's to get people participating in these primaries.
Max Miller said in one of his many statements about you, but most recently, that you've betrayed constituents. And so on that point of your district, when I look at it in the numbers from 2016, Rocky River, Westlake, Bay Village, narrowly, but did vote for President Biden. Parts of Summit County did. Obviously, as we move into certain rural areas, they were more for Trump. But doesn't that suggest that our constituents aren't all necessarily betrayed, or that there is room? How do you view that in light of his statement that this is only a a one ideological party?
Yeah, I don't really put any confidence in anything that he says, to be perfectly honest. He hasn't lived in the district long enough to understand it very well. But that being said, look, I know from polling, but I also know just from being around and talking to folks on the ground, that it was a very difficult vote for sure, but one that I believe was the right thing for the country. I believe the majority of constituents actually believe that. But more to the point, in this job, you have to be willing to take tough votes that might ultimately end up with some challenges. I mean, that's otherwise why do the job? The job's hard. It's hard on families. It's hard personally. I've always believed to do this job well, you have to be willing to lose it, and you can't put your own incumbency ahead of what's right for the country or your constituents. And I've always tried to live that way. I've always tried to govern that way, and I'm proud of the service. I'm proud of the decisions we've made. I haven't gotten everything perfect. Nobody does, but ultimately, I'm very happy with the amount of time that we've spent and the service we've provided.
I'm going to ask you in a moment about some of the policies that you hope people will carry on that you started, or some of the agenda items. But just on that last point, on the vote to impeach the president, had you not made that vote, given that you've already voted almost 90% of the time within the Republican ideological structure, do you think you would have faced this pushback if it came down to just that vote? Or if it wasn't there, do you think you'd have a challenger in the primary?
Hard to say. I mean, look, it's a free country. Anybody can primary or run against you for any reason. That's one of the reasons why I've never really thought that way when it comes to how I vote. Any vote you take, there's going to be passionate people on both sides of it. So that's never been a consideration of mine. But again, the truth is, whether I had taken this vote or not, this increasingly had become a life that just wasn't working for us as a family. And, it really started to crystallize as COVID started. And, I went from being on the road 100 to 150 days a year to not being on the road much at all, and being a more present dad and husband. And then, once vaccines and travel picked back up again, it increasingly got to a point where we just kept saying, I kind of like being home. I like seeing my kids every day. I like being with my wife every day, and being a more present dad and husband. And so, compounding with the political environment is this reality and realization, that, if we're going to have the family life that we've always dreamed of, which has always been our top priority, then we need to make changes. And so that's what we've decided to do. And I know it's tough, and it's tough on me and tough on a lot of folks who are excited about the work we're doing. But I'm no member of Congress at all if I can't put my family first.
I think a lot of people will understand and respect that. That final question I'll come back to is some of the agenda items, the policies that you were working within your caucus. What would you like to see them continue to do? What would you like to see them avoid on a pure policy agenda? Whoever carries forward has to really be beyond just that 10% you talked about. What are those issues out there that you are leaving undone or not yet complete?
Well, in our country, no issue's ever complete, right? We're always evolving, and we're always pushing new policies. I'll tell you, our focus as an office has always been to put our constituents first, and to serve our veterans. Our veterans have been willing to, or in some instances, paid the ultimate sacrifice for our country, and so we believe we have an obligation to serve them. And so we're working on some veteran homelessness and mental health initiatives right now, and I hope to finish those off before we exit. But if we aren't able to get those done, by next year, then hopefully whoever takes the seat will pick them up, because there's universal agreement across the 16th district that we have to do right by our veterans. Additionally, we've been working on some good workforce training pieces of legislation with Senator Portman for quite a while. Hope to get those done as well, but again, you can't always control everything in Congress. And then the final point, since I got here, and this is pre-COVID, I've always believed the U.S. is in an ideological and existential battle with China. They are the great power competitor of our time. and we have to do everything we can to make sure that U.S. values and U.S. leadership proliferate around the world, as opposed to Chinese Communist Party values. And so I think that's also pretty universal across the district. And so we'll keep pounding on that, and that work never ends.
All right. Well, I'll leave you with this, and I'm sure everybody's going to ask what's next. Will you keep a voice in local politics? Will you step away? And obviously, being with the family is the priority, but it will be hard to take the congressman out of the congressman here.
Yeah, once you have the opportunity and the privilege to serve, I think the bug never quite leaves you. And so while I don't see myself pursuing elected office, anytime soon, maybe when the kids are grown and out of the house, but I'll always stay engaged and involved. And Northeast Ohio is always home. That'll never change. And so I hope to continue to have a voice. But really, before getting into Congress, I was in business, and I plan to go back into that and make an impact there, and hopefully be able to contribute to society in that way, because it's important as well. And I look forward to that. Not before we finish off some work here, but it's just been such an honor, and will continue to be so as long as I'm in the seat.